that one, which would have been the text for yesterday. So we're in Genesis. Okay, so yes, we had, when we last left our hero, I just like saying that, sounds good. Isaac and Jacob were getting the blessing, or sorry, Jacob and Esau were getting the blessing from Isaac. And then there was, well, Dad's going to pass away, and when he does, my brother's going to kill me. So Mom's saying, send him away, and she's trying to convince Dad to send him away, and all that kind of stuff. So that's where we were at. So Jacob has bought the birthright, which is the double portion, from his brother for a bowl of soup. And now he's swindled his brother out of the blessing. And then if we remember, we read through the blessing that Esau gets, because he's convinced his dad, I've got to have a blessing. But the blessing, just half of it's blessing and half of it's not. But there's a caveat at the end that it will undo the length of the blessing that Jacob got, kind of thing in there. So if you don't remember that, go back and read that. But I just want to say that's where we were at. And so now we're going to go and see what's the the fallout of all those actions. So Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him. Then he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Padan Aram, to the house of your mother's father Bethuel. Take a wife for yourself there, from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty, there's a note there. Oh, El Shaddai. Okay, it's making sure it knows which name for God it is. Bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner, and the Lord God gave to Abraham. Then Isaac sent Jacob on his way, and he went to Padan Aram to Laban, son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, who was the mother of Jacob and Esau. Okay, so this might seem strange to us, essentially marrying cousins. However, in ancient times, this was a common practice. When you do this too often and too repetitively and too close, you get genetic problems. At this point, there's not necessarily that worry and that concern going on here. So, but there is, and remember, Rebecca's the one that brought this up to Isaac to bring up and send him away, saying, hey, you know what? His brother Esau married a couple of Hittite women. We've got nothing but problems with them. He needs to go, and he needs to marry one of our relatives, not these local women. These local women, they be crazy. And we need him to go marry in the family. So there's now Isaac thinks it's his idea. Jacob thinks it's Isaac's idea. And along with it, notice the further blessing that he attains within here. He gets to have the blessing of Abraham, the promise of Abraham given to him. Now Esau learned that Isaac had blessed Jacob and had sent him to Padan Aram to take a wife there, and that when he blessed him, he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and had gone to Padan Aram. Esau then realized how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac, so he went to Ishmael and married Mahalath, the sister of Nebaioth. That's too many vowels in a row for me. Nebaioth, and the daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, in addition to the wives he already had. So, okay, Dad, if you want us to marry in the family, I'm going to go to, I'm not going to go far away. Like you sent my brother to his mother's household, I'm going to go to your half-brother, to Abraham's household. See how he's thinking here? If you don't like my Hittite wives, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go to Ishmael's sisters. Now, Ishmael is a son. Wait. Is it son or is his daughters? Let me just double check this. They went to Ishmael and married Mahalath, the sister of Nebaioth, the daughter of Ishmael. Okay, sorry. It's his daughter. So Ishmael's daughter. I was just suddenly thinking the genealogy there. Yeah, so the daughter of Ishmael. So he's going to another branch of the family to marry. So he is marrying in the line of Abraham directly, not outside the line, which would be, well, actually, it is further up. So it's still in line. It's not in the line of Abraham, but it's in the family of Abraham still. I'm just clarifying that. In addition to the wives he already had. So he goes and gets another wife. Well, I'll do this. This will please Dad. Dad really wants us to be related? I didn't know this. I'll go do this. Now, it doesn't say he got rid of the other wives. He just took another wife. Mahalath, the sister of Nebaioth, the daughter of Ishmael of Abraham. Okay. All right, so now we have Jacob's dream at Beth El. So Beth, again, is house, and El is part of Elohim, which is the name of God, or a name of God. So Beth El is the house of God. Yes, letting the man think it was his idea. Yes, exactly. You pose it as a question, someone can think about it and then think it's their idea. But tell them to do it. No. To propose to them the problem that it could occur, they'll come around to what you want and think should happen. But, yeah, so it's all in how you approach things. And yes, it was, in this case, the man, but it doesn't always have to be in that kind of approach. So, anyway, but yes, you're correct. So Jacob left Beersheba and went to Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. This just, okay, most people are amazed at the rest of the story. Here's the part that amazes me. He takes a stone and makes a pillow with it. I find that fascinating. Because to me, if I'm going to do that, and I have at times perhaps laid my head against it, that's going to take some time. I'm going to find the right stone, the right size, the right shape. I mean, to me, this is not a small thing. Now, maybe he's more callous and just picks any old stone, but I just find that piece fascinating of why is this in the story? There's no need to give this detail of he found a stone there and he put it under his head and laid to sleep. At least I don't know why else it's in the story. But I love that piece. It's just this tiny detail thrown in there. This is how he's doing it. I'm fascinated by that. I want to know more. Was it granite? Was it limestone? Was it shale? Was it a cool stone? Was it rounded? Yeah, it's a simple camp. He doesn't need to make any kind of tent. He just lays out in the, cowboy style. There's the fire. I'm laying here with my bedroll. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven. The angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it, or it could have been beside him, stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land in which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. Using the name and the name of your offspring in blessing. Okay, see for 20 down there. Okay. I am with you, and I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. So we have had God show up to Abraham a couple of times. We've had God show up to Isaac, and now we have him show up to Jacob. Now, interesting, Jacob had just given him the same words that he had received and said, you are going to be the one through which Abraham's promise is fulfilled, through which the promise to me is fulfilled. It's going to be through you. And now God shows up to validate what had been said through Isaac. So, oh, interesting thought, ukulele. Maybe the stone is to indicate that the dream wasn't caused by smoke in his tent or something he ate. Interesting. Hmm. Anyway, still, I love that little detail. So now we have this, and then also notice in this, and this is one of the things that connects with where we're at in the New Testament readings. All the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. We have that in our reading in Romans. We have indications of that. What we just read in Matthew, that go out to the parable of the banquet. Go out and get those outside who weren't originally invited and bring them in. Who's that? The Gentiles. That's the Gentiles. So through you, all peoples on earth will be blessed. All peoples on earth, not. Okay, if you have a pastor that does this, I love when they do this. You know, some will just do the all means all, but I like doing it a different way of reading what it doesn't say. And all people in the United States will be blessed through you. And all people who have flat caps will be blessed through you. And all people on earth who are under 6 foot will be blessed through you. And all people that are right-handed on earth will be blessed through you. It's like, no, it doesn't say that. It's not what it says. You say what it doesn't say to help you understand. No, there's no exclusions. It's everybody. So here, see what it's saying. Don't just run past what it's saying. Okay. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. Isn't there a song, surely the Lord is in this place? I'm trying to remember what that song is. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil upon it. He called the place Beth-el, though the city used to be called Luz. Now, all of a sudden, we have a city here. So, and then, I think we have that mentioned in either Joshua, which we already went through, or it was in the Judges, not remembering exactly, but it did tell us in one of those two places that, yes, Beth-el used to be called Luz, but this could also predate the city of Luz being there, because if it is Joshua or if it is the Judges, if it's Joshua, it's 400 years later. So when Jacob is here, no city. Luz becomes a city there. Then it becomes Beth-el again. So he names it Beth-el. Another city comes in called Luz. Then it's returned because people understand Jacob had been here. Then we're going to rename it Beth-el because he named it Beth-el. Even though there was no city, there was just a place. Oh, sorry, Twilight Vixen, you're missing because so early. Yeah, sorry about that. Well, glad you're here now, friend. Glad you're here now. So we are in Genesis. So we're going through a story of Jacob at this time. Now, look at his response to the dream that he has. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God." Or, since God, father's household, the Lord. Okay. And, why is there a note on and? Oh, then. It could be then. Uh, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. So if you've ever wondered where this idea of tithing, tithe means tenth, comes from, first reference we have is Abraham and Melchizedek, where he gives a tenth of everything he just gained in a battle or conquest to Melchizedek. He could have been giving a tenth of everything, but it clearly is at least a tenth of all that he just acquired from there. Here, this is just a vow that Jacob is making, not a command. It's simply a vow. Like, God, if I know this is you in this place, I know that that there's the promise for you to be my God and you to be with me. So if you're going to do that, here's what I'm going to do. So there is not a requirement for Jacob to do this. This is of Jacob's own desire to do this. Now, interesting that we read through another case where someone was making a vow to God. I can't remember his name. One of the judges who vowed that when he returned, if he was victorious, the first thing that came out of his house, he would take and sacrifice that to God. Not a great vow. Not, no. I think there's a bad thought in there, and we talked about that. But here again, unwarranted promises to God. What is the root of it? It's understanding the fullness of who God is, and before receiving something, making a vow that once I receive this, I'm going to do more with this in that regard. So a common thought would be, for instance, and I'm not doing this, so don't think that, and I'm not suggesting anyone else would do that, but I know some people want to be on Twitch full time, and they want to be able to have this be the way they make their living. So someone might make a vow to God, say, God, if I'm able to do this, if you're able to make this happen, here's what I'm going to do. I'll give one stream a week to doing this. That we're going to do worship on stream. We're going to do a service on stream where I'm going to give money to other Christians on stream. You can come up and do those kinds of things. So here it's in a response to a promise of God to go and do it. But what it is looking to the future in all of those cases is saying, when this happens, when I receive the blessing, I'm not going to keep it to myself. I think that's the important piece within it. When I am blessed by you, which I know I'm going to be, I already have a plan of what I'm going to do with it. So that's what's going on there. So, and then he takes the stone. Love the connection in the story. He takes the stone, which was his pillow, and he sets it up as a pillar. Does that say Ebenezer? I'm going to have to look. Oh, we're in the wrong one. Okay, so we are in Genesis 28. Sorry, I just have to look up stuff at times. Pillar, stone, Eben. Yep, Eben stone. And set up a pillar, Masaba. Pillar, stump, pillar, monument, personal memorial with an altar. Okay. Well, there is Eben. Eben is stone. Ebenezer is stone of help. So setting up an Ebenezer is essentially what he's doing. It's a stone that he's setting up as a monument. So I love this idea because there's not a whole lot about setting up a stone that points to anything. You have to know and have to ask a person who knows to know what the stone points to. For instance, take Stonehenge. We have lots of debate about what is Stonehenge about. Why? Because there's nobody alive today that's passed on the meaning of it. Now, yes, we have some understanding of, yes, there's some things that happen there, and yes, there's some astrological things it connects with, but we can't with 100% certainty say why it was and what it's doing. So in order to do this, you would see a stone that you know is what? Not a regular occurrence in the way that it's placed. So you have to ask, why was that there? Who put that up there? For what purpose? That's the point of these Ebenezers and pillars that happened throughout Genesis, that happened throughout Judges as well, when we saw those, and when we'll see them continuing to happen in places, is to point to something else. Here, it's to point to this fact that God showed up to him in a dream. And he's saying, this is the gate to heaven. This is the house of God. This is where God showed himself to me. So, all right, so now he's going to get to his uncle's house. And if you weren't here, his mother made the suggestion to his father to send him away to his uncle's house for two reasons. One, because she was afraid Esau's going to kill him because, well, he's conniving and he swindled his brother and he swindled his dad. And so as soon as his dad dies, who's very ill, his brother's going to kill him. So let's get him away so he can cool off and can't go do that. The second reason was she used the excuse of, well, his brother's married Hittite women and they're awful, so let's go send him to the family. So she uses those rationales to get this to happen, and so that's where we're picking up. So he's there. Then Jacob continued on his journey and came to the land of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the open country, with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it, because the flocks were watered from the well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. So more than likely, when you're describing this, they're probably not doing a well from the standpoint of what we're thinking of in the last 200 years. You might see a well where there's all of these nice round stones around it stacked up higher, and it might have been lower to the ground and an animal could potentially fall in it. So you're going to cover it to make sure. It's also probably not as big around. It could be, but maybe not entirely. Also, you wouldn't want dust and debris and other things to get in there. So the covering the well is to protect it from contamination. Could also be protecting it from people falling in. We tend to see that occasionally where kids fall in wells and holes. I think there was just one recently too. So Jacob asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," they replied. He said to them, "Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?" "Yes, we know him," they answered. Then Jacob asked them, "Is he well?" "Yes, he is," they said. "And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." Okay, so this is a fascinating thing that we see throughout the Old Testament. Don't always make this connection necessarily. How often there are women, daughters, who are shepherds. We, some reason, only think of David as the shepherd boy, and we miss all of the women who are shepherds. Usually, shepherds, the job of being the shepherd, falls on the youngest. And yet, we have Moses, who meets his wife at a well, because she's a shepherd. We have Jacob, who meets his wife at a well. She's a shepherd. We have Rebecca, not a shepherd, but at a well, where she's met to come back to Isaac. There's more stories too. So interesting how often women are the shepherds. How often someone needs to, well, it doesn't need to, but someone comes along and gives them aid, because otherwise they have to wait their turn or other things before they're able to get the water. They've got to wait for someone else to do things. That's the case with Moses. That's the case. I'm trying to think, where's the other one that chases people away from the well? I can't remember that one, but so here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep. Look, he said, the sun is still high. It is not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to pasture. Oh. So she's coming with the sheep. It's not time to put the sheep away for the night. Let's water them and send them back to pasture. We can't, they replied, until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep. So we can't do it. Everybody's got to get here before we do it. While he was still talking to them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherd. When Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of his uncle Laban, and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. He had told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and a son of Rebekah, so she ran and told her father. Now we read, Jacob kissed her. This is a kiss of greeting. This is not romantic kiss. So don't be thinking that. This would have been customary, a greeting kiss. So, in the New Testament it says, greet one another with a holy kiss. That kind of idea here. It's a greeting. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him. See, there's the kiss again. So it's not romantic. And brought him to his home. And there Jacob told him all these things. Then Laban said to him, you are my own flesh and blood. So, yeah. So cousins and uncle. So Jacob marries Leah and Rachel. After Jacob had stayed with him a whole month, Laban said to him, just because you are a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak, delicate eyes. And Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for 7 years in return for your daughter Rachel. Okay, so Jacob sets the terms. Notice that. Jacob sets the terms. His uncle says, look, your family, I'm not going to take advantage of you. You're going to work. So what do you want to get paid? He says, I want your daughter. I'll work for 7 years for her. He didn't have to set the terms. He could have started with, I just want to marry your daughter and I'll be family. Could have just started with that and got married right away. Could have went in that direction. Doesn't do that, though. He sets the terms. Yeah, I know. I don't know why I didn't say a year or 2. I wonder that, too. Yeah, we really don't have, unless what we have here is the use of 7 in reference to the number of the perfect amount of time, a perfect, or completion, that 7 is used figuratively and not literally. However, if we continue the story, it is understood literally. So I don't know. I don't know why 7. But let's keep going. So he sets the terms. Just wanted to point that out. He sets them up. He wants to marry. Laban said, it's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me. There's his yes. Well, you're at least a relative. Okay, that's fine. So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but that seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife. My time is completed, and I want to make love to her." So he works the 7 years before he gets Rachel. That whole story is condensed into a couple of sentences there. So we've just fast forwarded 7 years. So Laban brought together all the people of the place and gave a feast. Interesting. We were just reading about Jesus' parable about a feast, wedding feast. And when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and Jacob made love to her. And Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as her attendant. When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you've done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" Okay, this is just so good. Jacob swindles his brother for a pot of stew out of the birthright. Now, the birthright, if you remember, is the double portion for the oldest son. So if you have 2 children, you divide up the inheritance into 3. The oldest gets 2 portions, the youngest gets 1. If, like Jacob has 12, you divide it by 13. The oldest would get 2, and everyone else would get 1. So there's that double portion. So he swindles his brother out of that. Then he swindles his father to give him the blessing instead of giving it to his brother. And so what does he do? By the way, I had pointed this out earlier about Rachel being involved. Sorry, Rebecca. Gotta make sure his mother being involved in the swindling of the birthright. She also, I think, in some regards, was involved in the way that she treated him. But remember, she had a visit that told her that there's 2 within you, and the younger will serve the older, and so she always treated the younger better because she had that. But this is her brother. Where did she learn it? Well, probably from her father. That's probably where her brother learned it. And her brother is very good at this whole conniving thing, which she teaches to her son Jacob. And so Jacob goes back to who? The family lineage that learned this. And, well, uncle's just better at it. Just better at it. Jacob gets a taste of his own medicine. So it's just desserts. He treated people this way, conniving, swindling, getting what he wanted out of it, even though there was some other kind of nuance. And so what happens here? His uncle gets the work for 7 years, marries off his daughter. Now, we'll get the explanation here in a second, but I just wanted to point out this whole conniving and swindling and misperception and misdirection, whatever you want to word that as, the deception that takes place. So that's a family trait. So Laban replied, "It is not our custom to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one." So why did I do this? Well, because the older daughter hadn't been married yet. She had to get married first. The younger daughter can't get married before the older daughter. The older daughter has to get married first. Finish this daughter's bridal week. So 7 days. Then we will give you the younger one also in return for another 7 years of work. He set the terms, remember? He set the 7 years. Now there's the 7 days, and then you'll get the other marriage, and then you got to work another 7 years. And Jacob did so. He finished the week with Leah, and then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Did he get another wedding? I don't know. Maybe he didn't care. Laban gave his servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her attendant. Jacob made love to Rachel also, and his love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah, and he worked for Laban another 7 years. Okay, so again, summarizing 14 years in a short story here, with two wives, 2 daughters, 2 sisters. Yeah. Also, what did he learn from his parents? We're going to see that in his relationship with his wives. We're going to see that in his relationship with his children. He learned from his dad that you pick a favorite son, which was his brother. He learned from his mom, you pick a favorite son, which was him. What is he going to do going forward? He's going to have a favorite wife. And because that's his favorite wife, he's going to have favorite sons. Just that's what he learned. And that's what he does. That's what he passes on. And that's also part of what messes up a whole bunch of family relationships and dynamics. I could also point in that having more than one wife just doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. However, culturally, there could have been reasons and times where this did make sense. So I'm not going to pick on that aspect. I'll let that part slide. The whole servant thing, yeah, I'm not going to let that one go. All right, so Jacob's children. So now we're going to get into the story of all of the kids. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. So there is such a theme of childless women. So here we have it again with Rachel. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben. Seems like the Hebrew for he has seen my misery. The name means see a son. Okay, so this would be a Hebrew pun. So you have a word that sounds like misery, but it actually means see a son. So we have sun, which could be the sun in the sky, or we have son, which could mean a person. So it's that kind of a play on words. So his name is see a son, but also I've been in misery. God's heard my misery. He's given me a son. So this is one of those awesome things Hebrew does. It doesn't translate well into English, which is another great reason to go look up names whenever they come along. For she said, it is because of the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now. I've given him a son. Now my husband will love me. Oh, what a horrible, horrible reality to live in. Let me put it that way. That's just horrible. That would be the only cause for him to love you. She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too. So she named him Simeon, which means one who hears. So it probably means. So we don't always have entirely a good understanding of every meaning, but see, he hears. So God heard again. So again, just think about this. The name of the kids are going to continue to point out what's happening here. So the first one is named See a Son, and the second one is named See He Hears. Or One Who Hears. Sorry, One Who Hears. So in the name of kids who are walking around, every time Dad calls their name, there's pointing to what the meaning of the name is. See a son, come here. He who hears, come here. Just that play on things that we would get no idea. Oh, I just say Simeon. Okay, call him Simeon. Oh, Reuben. Come on, Reuben. No, there's more. Okay, let's keep going. And she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, now at last my husband will be attracted to me because I have borne him 3 sons. So she named him Levi. Levi sounds like and may be derived from the Hebrew word attached. So, yeah, I've given him 3 sons. He has to love me now. He has to be attached to me. Oh, she conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, this time I will praise the Lord. So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. Judah sounds like and may be derived from the Hebrew for praise. So So Ah is often going to be a connection to God. So Judah could be praise God in a sense, or it could just be praise with the understanding of who you are praising. So we have 4 kids, and still she is trying to be loved. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jake, but she's loved by God, and because of her misery, which was the first son, she is given children. Then Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children. She became jealous of her sister, so she said to Jacob, "Give me children or I'll die." Yeah, that this is just a problem, and I'm not going to go into it. I think we all see it. Okay, Jacob became angry with her and said, "Am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children?" So it's like, look, this might sound a little crass. My stuff works. I've got 4 kids. It's not me. It has to be God stopping us from having kids together. I'm not the problem. He might be saying, but you are. You're barren. And also, that's normally the thing that was thought, is that women were the problem, that they were the ones barren, that it wasn't the men. However, we know better than that now. Yes. Well, we don't know the spacing of all these. So busy in some respects, but uh, if you lived in Quebec, in the province of that, 100 years ago, I have friends who are Canadian. You weren't actually considered a mom until you had 10 kids. They didn't refer to you as fully having fulfilled the duty of becoming a mom until you had 10 kids. Then you were fully a mom. So culturally and time make differences. Yeah, there are often a dozen, 15, 20 kids would be the norm. And no, and Quebec is also Catholic, so they were not and would not have been thinking that you should use birth control. So that you needed to have kids to help conquer the wilderness and to outnumber the Protestants was also part of that too. All right, so she's pleading with Jacob to give her a son, and he's saying, "I'm not the one responsible, God is." Then she said, "Here is Bilhah, my servant. Sleep with her so that she can bear children for me, and I too can build a family through her." I'm not sure, and obviously it had to be passed on, but I'm not sure how prominent the thought or the story of, hey, where Ishmael comes from and the problems of Ishmael. Maybe giving your servant to your husband's not a good idea, but she's desperate. So she might know it. I'm just answering that question. Did she know the story of Hagar and Abraham and Sarah and Ishmael? Yeah, I think she does. Um, certainly Jacob does. Let me put it that way. Even if he hasn't shared it with her, Jacob certainly knows. So he's going to know this is not a great idea. But she suggested. So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife. Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore him a son. Then Rachel said, "God has vindicated me. He has listened to my plea and given me a son." Because of this, she named him Dan, which means he has vindicated. So now think about this. So Leah has children who she's named certain things. So every time their name is called, dad knows and sister knows the name of the kids and the story. So what's sister do? Vindicated! Vindicated! Come here, Vindicated! I'm Vindicated! Hey, Vindicated, come on over here! Vindicated! Every time his sister hears Vindicated, little jealousy. I mean, the naming has meaning for the circumstance, but depending on the name, there's also a taunt of a little bit that could be put in there. I'm just saying. Just saying. So Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, I have had a great struggle with my sister, and I have won. So she named him Naphtali, which means my struggle. So the two kids walking around vindicated in my struggle. Come here, vindicated in my struggle. Like as I said, I think there's some taunting going back and forth in the naming here between the sisters. And what's Jacob do? Well, names are supposed to be given through the father. He's not exercising that right, or if he is, he's rubber stamping the names that the two sisters are picking against one another. Not a good thing to do. So when Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Two can play that game. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, what good fortune! She named him Gad. Oh, a troop is coming. Oh, that's interesting. Gad can mean good fortune or a troop. So play on words there. What good fortune or a troop is coming and named him Gad. Good fortune, yes. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, how happy I am. The women will call me happy. So she named him Asher. Happy. Happy. So if you think Happy Gilmore is a weird name, if you've seen that movie and you go, who would name their kid Happy? Well, Leah would name her son Happy. Asher means happy, and so she named her son Happy. So Asher Gilmore is really what it would be. Happy Gilmore. It's a very good biblical name to name your kid Happy. During wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the field and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you also take my son's mandrakes too? So, yeah, feuding goes on. Very well, Rachel said. He can sleep with you tonight in return for the mandrakes. This is just, I'm just going to keep reading. You can make your own decisions on the soap opera that we're reading through. So when Jacob came in from the fields that evening, Leah went out to him. You must sleep with me, she said. I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he slept with her that night. God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, God has rewarded me with giving my servant to my husband. So she named him Issachar. Sounds like the Hebrew for reward. Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I have bore him 6 sons. So she named him Zebulun, which means honor. Sometime later, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. We don't have the name there. Bummer. Then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and enabled her to conceive. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, God has taken away my disgrace. She named him Joseph and said, may the Lord add to me another son. So Joseph means, may he add. So how would you like that as a name? I mean, we know people named Joseph or Joe, and we probably don't think about the meaning of it. He certainly would have known the meaning of it. And so, may the Lord add to me another son. So it's kind of, well, it reminds me in some ways of families I've known, and I went to school with a girl whose parents really wanted a son. And she was the 10th daughter because her parents wanted a son and they were going to keep having kids until they had a son. What value does that kid feel if they know they weren't what their parents wanted? Their parents wanted a son, and now there's 10 daughters, and none of us were wanted by our parents. They want a son. So here you have Joseph, whose name means, may the Lord add to me another one, another son. So in other words, it's like, one's not enough. I need more, God. I need more. So this one is the starter, but I need more. So he's always walking around going, hey, God needs to give me another one. Come here. God needs to give me another son. Come here. Yeah. I mean, this is just look through the meaning of these names. There is just this sad story. Sad story. Okay, so that's the story of the kids. So so in the process of all of that, this is happening simultaneously. So these two things, now we're going to go back in time to the timeline of what Jacob is doing in relationship to serving. So we have the story in the sidetrack of the two sisters and their feuding, and the story of them having children. Now we're going to go back and we're going to read through the story of his relationship with serving for those 7 years and going forward. So after Rachel gave birth, I guess I didn't mention here, the mandrake, we read kind of past that. That is thought to be an aphrodisiac. It's also thought to perhaps have other medicinal properties that would help to be able to get pregnant. So there's some of those kinds of things. I don't fully know all of it, but that's the relationship of why there was hey, I need those mandrakes. It'll help me get pregnant. I need those mandrakes. It'll make everything. It'll make a great evening, so to speak. So, all right. So Jacob's flocks increase. So now his children increase, and now his flocks are going to increase. So after Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me on my way. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm wrong. I thought that this was going to be simultaneous. This is afterwards. So he's done the 7 years. Send me on my way so I can go back to my homeland. Give me my wives and children from whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I've done for you. But Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. He added, name your wages and I will pay them. Jacob said to him, you know how I have worked for you and how your livestock has fared under my care. The little you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I have been. But now, when may I do something for my own household? What shall I give you? He asked. So look, he's setting him up here. Jacob's trying to set him up. Don't give me anything, Jacob replied, but if you will do this one thing for me, I will go on tending your flocks and watching over them. Let me go through all your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. They will be my wages, and my honesty will testify for me in the future. Whenever you check on my wages you have paid me, any goat in my possession that is not spotted or speckled, or a lamb that is not dark-colored, will be considered stolen. Yeah, on some level, Twilight Vixen, when we read through stories in Scripture, they can also be a reflection of our own stories and remind us of things that are depressing in the story and might be depressing in our lives. However, if we look through, there also is usually, in the midst of something that is sad and sorrowful, a glimmer of God's blessing in there. So it may not always come in the way that we we want, but there's often a piece in there. So I'm hoping that that is true for you, and we'll be praying that that's true, even if it doesn't come in the form of children in any way. So. But notice what he does here. He sets up and saying, I'm going to take all of the speckled and the dark colored sheep. You get, and the goats. You're going to get all the pure white ones. You're going to get all the best, the ones that are that way. And so if ever in the future we're trying to see whose sheep are whose and whose goats are whose, this is how we'll decide it. Now, I don't know sheep and goats well enough, but I have guppies. And if you ever go to the pet store and you look for guppies, you can get certain kinds of guppies. There are some with sunbursts. That's one of the names. There are some that are yellow. There are some that are black. There are some that are tiger striped. There's zebra striped. And what happens is there's, genetics within there. But if you keep them all segregated, you will continue to have the same offspring of what you have. But if you have them intermixed, there's freedom for them to produce different things. So, since I've had my tank for some time and I didn't segregate them, I have all kinds of weird combinations, and there are all kinds of things within there. So, if this is what's happening, you can have parents of one having the other, I'm assuming, within sheep and goats. And they're going to have lineage of both within them. So, there's the possibility. So, we're going to read it what happened. So Laban agrees with this. That's a good way to divide them up. It's all by chance. You can't necessarily, or you won't necessarily be able to only breed one or the other. Agreed, said Laban. Let it be as you have said. The same day he removed all the male goats that were streaked or spotted, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, all that had white in them. Oh, so the goats would be maybe the opposite. So goats that had white instead of the darker gray or black or whatever they were. And all the dark-colored lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob continued to tend the rest of Laban's flock. So he's separating them. They're going over there. Yours are going over there. Jacob, however, took fresh-cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and made white stripes on them by peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Then he placed the peel branches in all the watering troughs so that they would be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. When the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they mated in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. Jacob set apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streaked and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks for himself and did not put them with Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob would place the branches in the trough in front of the animals so they would mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he would not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban, and the strong ones went to Jacob. In this way, the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks of female and male servants and camels and donkeys. Okay, so I have no idea if this is a thing that is folklore, I'll use that word, or if this would be scientific to be able to say certain branches in certain ways are going to cause offspring to do certain things. But if they were strong, he did this. If they were weak, he didn't, and they start producing the the outcome that he wants. Fascinating thing. So there could be, if there is some truth in it, something within the wood that would have mineral of some kind in there that they would likely chew on the bark or the branch, I'm going to guess, and get that mineral, and thus would then change their coats in that regard. It could be something along those lines that, an astute shepherd would know that if you are going to be giving birth, if the mother gets this during birth, this will happen, and if they don't, this will happen. So I'm guessing that's what's happening here. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth from what belongs to our father. Okay, so now Laban's sons are upset with Jacob's success. And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude towards him was not what it had been. So now that he's not just tending Laban's stuff, he's tending his own. Yeah, now we have a problem. Then the Lord said to Jacob, go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. He said to them, I see that your father's attitude towards me is not what it was before, but the Lord of my fathers has been with me. You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. So we think of Jacob as a swindler, and he is, yet he also had that come upon him 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If, he said, the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. And if, he said, the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. In breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, or spotted. The angel of God said to me in a dream, Jacob. I answered, here I am. Notice that. Here I am. That's a common thing to respond to when there's a call. Here am I, Lord. Here I am. He said, look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flocks are streaked, speckled, or spotted. For I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel. So I'm the God who spoke to you in Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your relatives. So he's telling them, I had a dream. That's why we're leaving. Then Rachel and Leah replied, do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estates? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do what God has told you. So they're essentially saying, we're not going to complain. We don't have an inheritance among our father. He sold us to you, and then the wages he got from the work that you did, he's squandered away. It's gone. Then Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods he had accumulated in Padan Aram. Is it telling us what it means finally? Oh, in northwest Mesopotamia. Okay. It's funny. They now tell us where it is. To go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away. So he fled with all he had, crossed the Euphrates River, and headed for the hill country of Gilead. Okay, so he has a dream. He's supposed to leave. He tells his wives. They're in agreement. He gets all the kids, all the wives, all the livestock, all the camels, sends them ahead. Rachel goes and steals her father's household gods. Okay, so household gods could be, I'm not saying it's absolutely this, but you would have a god over the hearth to bless the fire pit and the food. You'd have a god in other locations throughout the house. So she's stealing all the household gods. Interesting that in all of this, while Laban is recognizing the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the blessing there, still has all these other gods that are within the household. And Rachel grew up with them, and she wants to take them. Now, I'm not saying why. Maybe we'll get in the story. It'll say her motives. Here, we just know she's taken them. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So it took 3 days for this to fully be understood. Because, maybe he just moved the flocks. And now they're nowhere to be found. They're not in that field, the other field, the other field. They're gone. Taking his relatives with him. Oh, and everybody else is gone. He pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. Okay, so 3-day head start, but with all the animals that he's driving and his women and children, that 3 days was eaten up, and they catch. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." That is a weird dream. Just be careful not to say anything good or bad. What? Don't say anything, even if it's good? Okay. Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead when Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there too. Then Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You've deceived me, and you've carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of timbrels and harps? You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You've done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you. But last night the God of your father said to me, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.' Now you have gone off because you long to return to your father's household. But why did you steal my gods?" Okay, at this point you had a dream from the true God, and you still bring up the idols that are stolen. Weird. Jacob answered Laban, "I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force. But if you find anyone who has your gods, that person shall not live in the presence of your relatives. See for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me, and if so, take it." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. Okay, so this does in some ways remind me of the story that we had in Judges, and I wish I remembered his name, of, hey, whoever comes out of the door, I'll sacrifice it. Hey, if somebody has your gods, you can kill them. Dude, why do people say such things? It's the arrogance. Arrogance. I'm just going to say that. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the 2 tents of the 2 female servants, but he found nothing. After he came out of Leah's tent, he entered Rachel's tent. Now interesting, notice the order. It's everybody else, and now it's Rachel. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel's saddle and was sitting on them. Laban searched through everything in the tent, but found nothing. So she lets her dad go search every place and find that there's nothing. And she's sitting on them. They're on her camel. Rachel said to her father, "Do not be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm on my period." So he searched but could not find the household god. So now she lies to her father to cover up that she is sitting on the goods. Like father, like daughter. Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. "What is my crime?" he asked Laban. How have I wronged you that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the two of us. I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flock. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself, and you demanded payment for me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime and the cold at night. And sleep fled from my eyes. It was like this for 20 years. I was in your household. I worked for you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you. Laban answered Jacob, the women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or about the children they have bore? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us. So Jacob took a stone, and and set it up as a pillar. Excuse me. He said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took stones and piled them in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Yegar Sahadutha, and Jacob called it Gilead. So they both mean witness heap. I didn't know Gilead made witness heap. Meant witness heap. Interesting. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. That is why it was called Gilead. It was also called Mizpah, watchtower, because he said, may the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is witness between you and me. Laban also said to Jacob, here is this heap, and here is this pillar I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. Interesting. The God of Nahor is mentioned there. So the God of Abraham, yes, and the God of his father and the God of his brother. So Jacob took an oath in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered a sacrifice there in the hill country and invited his relatives to a meal. After they had eaten, they spent the night there. Early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them, and he left and returned home. Oh, okay. So, if you were reading this in a Hebrew Bible, it would not be chapter 31, verse 55. It would be chapter 32, verse 1. So that last verse would be in the next chapter. Wow. So, ongoing soap opera. So, if you If you like telenovelas, here's one for you. This could be so dragged out as an ongoing soap opera to play out. So there we go. So we're through Genesis 31.